You have a goal. You have a goal. You have a goal. Goals for everybody! What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken win Game 3 for the first time in franchise history. And boy, oh boy, did they win it, defeating the Stars 7-2. And what a huge, important win this was for the Kraken as well, because while they did lose Game 3 in the series against the Avalanche, and Game 4 was maybe the most exciting game of that series with the OT winner for Eberle, it is nice to go into that fourth game with the chance to put the other team up against it and not have to worry about the potential of going down 3-1, which, especially against a team like the Avalanche, would have been pretty bad, even if Florida did manage to come back from a 3-1 series deficit against the best regular season team in NHL history. Still, the Kraken now have a chance to put the Stars right up against it if they can also win Game 4. But before we get to that great news and how this game unfolds for the Kraken, let's start off with some good news. And that is that Jared McCann, with the extra day off, was able to, well, on the first day, skate with the team with a non-contact jersey on, and then the following day, skated with the team in practice with a full contact. I mean, they don't actually have contact in practices, but with his regular white practice jersey on for that one. Which, although he still didn't play in Game 3, is obviously a good sign that he could be back sooner rather than later for the Kraken, and hopefully even maybe in Game 4. Although, once McCann is back in the lineup, the question then is, where does he come back into the lineup to? The obvious answer would be you put him right back with Beniers and Eberle on the first line, but with the way Cartier's been playing, you probably aren't taking him out of the lineup. Now, there may be an open spot, as we'll get to, with an injury that happens later in this game and a guy that didn't return to the third period. But even then, do you want to risk Cartier losing the chemistry that he's clearly been able to build with Eberle and Beniers, especially over these last couple of games, as that line has really started to click in these last two games for the Kraken, scoring both of their goals, their only 2 goals in Game 2, and now getting on the board a couple more times here in Game 3. Honestly, yeah, you probably still do put McCann right back on that line, but then where does Cartier go, and how do you mix things around there? Who ends up on that fourth line? If I had to guess, I would say McCann probably does come back into his spot right away with Beniers and Eberle on that first line, although calling it a first line, again, the Kraken pretty much have 3 second lines and then a third line rather than, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Either way, the Beniers line, McCann comes right back onto that one, and certainly will slot right back into the power play, where even though they had an okay night in this game, it's been pretty stagnant without him. The penalty kill's still been going pretty well, so if McCann isn't ready to step right back into a full-time role, maybe they give him a little bit of a break and let him off of the penalty kill for another game or two. Either way, I think McCann probably does go back to his spot, and then Cartier probably goes into, well, if Sprong isn't back, with him being the guy that didn't come back in the third period and missed part of the second, we still don't know what's up with Sprong, so he could be back by Game 4 or not. If he's not, then Cartier probably fills in his spot on the fourth line, and if he is back, well, it's anybody's guess. Again, I think Cartier's played well enough to earn a spot and stay in the lineup even with McCann back, but then the obvious scratch would still probably be Sprong. On the other hand, you could really use Sprong in his shot when it comes to power plays. So, yeah, who knows what they'll end up doing, and if we've learned anything from this series so far, it's that whatever we think is going to happen is probably the exact opposite, or at least certainly the thing that won't happen. A fact that even regardless of how it's played out in the rest of this series, could not have been more true about this game in particular itself. And I can say that with confidence, because if you had asked me what my prediction for this game was going in, I would never have guessed what ended up actually happening. Honestly, that comes down to, for me, the Stars really, after a shaky start in Game 1, seem to have gotten back to their style of game in Game 2, and with an extra day's break, there's no reason to think that they weren't going to just keep playing that way coming into Game 3. Now, I did expect that Kraken would put up a much better fight than they did in Game 2, having looked just completely beaten and tired, mentally, if not physically, in periods 2 and 3 of Game 2, where the Stars managed to kind of take that game away. They, with the extra day's rest, should be able to at least put up that fight. But again, I was expecting something like 3-2 Dallas, or maybe 3-2 the other way in Seattle's favor. And in that vein, I guess I got the 2 right, but it did not say that way for both sides. Even just taking this game period by period, though, each period, based on the flow of play, had very different outcomes when it came to what you would have expected on the scoreboard. If you had just taken the goals out and looked at how things had laid out as far as shots on goal, scoring chances, and where power plays are, I don't think anyone would have guessed where different things ended up happening, as really the first period was probably the best one that the Kraken had. Certainly as far as shots on goal and scoring chances are concerned, by the end of the first period, the Kraken had pretty much dominated the flow of play, outshooting, well, as we went into intermission, they were outshooting the Stars 11-5, but then official scoring makes it 9-4. Either way, the Kraken shut down the Stars defensively, only allowing those 4 shots on goal. But even as far as that's concerned, by the midpoint of the first period, shots were, I think, even or close to even at 5-4 for the Kraken. That having been said, the chances the Kraken were getting were much more dangerous even at that. And then in the back half of the first, the Kraken laid on the opportunities, eventually getting that press that put on another 5 shots onto Dallas's net. Ottinger, though, answering all of it with some spectacular saves. Well, maybe not quite as good as the one he had in Game 2 to Rob Soucy, but still very good goaltending coming from Ottinger, and looking like he was right back to what he had done in that second game. So by the end of the first period, even with everything the Kraken had going for them, all the momentum, the good scoring chances, it's still scoreless after 1, and with the way Ottinger was playing, and after Dallas having survived all of that from the Kraken, that did offer a somewhat ominous feel for what could be coming for the Kraken in the second period, because Ottinger is clearly on his game, and it's going to be hard to score on him. The Kraken, if they can keep creating those great scoring chances, probably will find 1 or 2 eventually, but you'd have to think that the Stars are going to be coming out with something to prove after having kind of left their goaltender out to do everything himself in that first period. And considering how they played in Game 2, we know that they are more than capable of flipping the script coming out into the second period and taking over the flow of play for their own. Especially also considering that even outside of the domination when it came to shots and scoring chances that the Kraken had in that first period, like I already mentioned, they were also very much controlling the physical aspect of this game and massively out-hitting the Stars in that first frame as well. Really with that tone being set early on in the first, when Soucy laid a devastating de-cleating or de-skating, whatever you want to call it, laying Marchment out on his back along the boards, which really got the crowd into it, as Marchment has kind of become public enemy number 1, at least as far as Seattle fans are concerned in this series. Not quite to the same level of McCarr because he hasn't injured anyone yet, but between the flop in Game 2 and the unnecessary continued cross-checks to the upper back of Geeky while he was down in Game 1, yeah, Marchment has started to draw some negative attention. Anyway, all of that is to say that if you had told someone going into the second period that by the end of it, the Stars were going to outshoot the Kraken 17-8, get the only power play of the period, well, technically they actually get 2, but one of them only lasts the final 7 seconds of the second period, and then most of it happens in the third. Either way, 17-8 as far as shots on goal, lone power play, and also start the period with the momentum and a high danger shot in close against Grubauer. And on top of all of that, that by the end of the period, the score would be 5-1. I don't think there's very many people, even with how great Grubauer has been in these playoffs, that would have assumed that the 5 were going to go in past Ottinger and the 1 would go past Grubauer. But then again, that's what this Kraken team has thrived on all season long, is defying the odds and doing what nobody expects. And sure enough, that's just what they do here in this period. Grubauer comes up with that huge save on the in-tight shot from Ben off of a pass from behind the net, and then the Kraken right back the other way, open up the scoring as Beniers gets a pass out to Cartier. He fires off the shot, which unfortunately does end up going off of the face of Miro Heiskanen in front of the net, who would go down and not return to the game. Hopefully he ends up being okay. It did sound like after the fact that there was a chance he could have come back for the third period, but after what the score looked like going into that third period, they just decided to give him the extra rest. And I would say it sounds hopeful for Stars fans that Heiskanen would be back for Game 4. Hard to say for sure. Regardless, though, of what the injury is here to Heiskanen, again, the number one thing is that we all hope that he's okay and can recover from it quickly. And either way, when it comes to the play that's happening out in front of Dallas's net, well, the puck is now sitting out in front of the crease, still outside the reach of Ottinger, and Heiskanen is down on the ice holding his face for pretty understandable reasons. which then leads it wide open for Eberle to come out from behind the net, right out in front, pick up that puck, and then do pretty much a 360 with it in front of Ottinger, which fakes Ottinger out to one side, and then Eberle's able to take it back to the other and put it past Ottinger to put the Kraken on the board 1-0. So thankfully, the Kraken, after everything that happened in the first period and not scoring there, are the ones that are able to open up the scoring for the 8th time in these playoffs, but just the first time in this series. And again, it seemed like a very important goal, not only because of what happened in the first period, but because if the Dallas Stars were able to survive all of that and then score first themselves, that very well may have had this unleashing of scoring that came afterwards end up going in their favor. But we don't have to worry about that because it was the Kraken that scored first, and sure enough, they're the ones that get the momentum, and just over a minute later, off of a face-off right outside Seattle's blue line, still on their side of center ice, but outside the defensive end, Geeky, who lost a number of face-offs and didn't win any in the first period, does win this one back for Larson. It's a D-to-D pass in the Kraken end, Larson to Dunn, and then Dunn finds Schwartz waiting at the far blue line. Schwartz in on the breakaway, or partial break. He's got Stars converging on him on either side, so he decides to pass it back for Wennberg, who's coming in behind him, wide open, and Wennberg takes the shot and buries it, bar down and in, over the glove hand of Ottinger to give the Kraken the now quick 2-0 lead. And of course with Wennberg, he doesn't always shoot, especially when he has this much open ice and is this far away from the net. But when he does on those few occasions, he still has that good shot to make it count, and does so here. Now, following this goal from Wennberg, the Stars are able to at least slow down the Kraken momentum, and it takes them almost 3 minutes to get back in the offensive end. But once they do, it's Carson Soucy with the puck up by the blue line, Marchment out in front of him, and Soucy just walks Mason Marchment, going right around him with not quite as much of a juke as McCann put on Donato back early on in Series 1. But either way, he just pretty much decides to go around Marchment. Marchment, I guess, lets him. Soucy walks it right up to the faceoff dot, fires off the shot, and beats Ottinger right through the 5-hole. One that, I mean, again, the shot probably shouldn't have been allowed to just be walked right up to the net like that, but still is one that Ottinger probably should have. He doesn't, though, and Soucy gets his first of the playoffs, the 16th goal scorer for the Kraken, I'm pretty sure, in these playoffs, and he makes it 3-0 Kraken. Following this Soucy goal, though, which is now the 3rd goal for the Kraken in 4 minutes and 20 seconds, would have been a little bit more fitting against, say, a team from Colorado than one from Texas. Anyway, again, the Dallas Stars are able to slow down the Kraken momentum and get it right into the Kraken end of the ice off of the faceoff. But less than 2 minutes later, the Kraken rush it back down the other way. This time, it's Eberle who pokes it away from Wyatt Johnston along the boards, right up to Beniers, and Beniers, kind of like Soucy, but he doesn't have to go around anybody, just skates it up to the faceoff circle, and right as 2 Stars are converging on him, he fires off the shot, and it goes right over the pad, blocker side of Ottinger and into the net. Another one that Ottinger should have had, but Beniers makes it 4-0 Kraken with his 2nd of the playoffs, and now catching up as far as rookie scoring is concerned with Wyatt Johnson, who he beat for this goal, as well as his own teammate now in Ty Cartier. Actually, teammate, line mate. And it is now at this point, actually even before this goal goes in for the Kraken, back when Soucy made it 3-0, I was kind of surprised that the Stars didn't take that opportunity to have a timeout and at least slow things down, because even though it wasn't 3 goals for the Kraken in 52 seconds like in period 1 of game 1, it is now 3 goals in less than 5 minutes, and yeah, you'd think that you'd want to at least have a chance to regroup a bit, but they decided not to take a timeout there, and now in just over 6 minutes, the Kraken have scored 4 times, and again, 2 of them have looked pretty bad on Ottinger, who's now allowed 4 goals on 5 shots for the Kraken in this period. That having been the case, I was really expecting this to be the point where they decide to go to Scott Wedgwood, but they leave Ottinger in for the rest of this period, and it does not continue to go well for him. It continues to not go well for him. You know what I meant. Now, I suppose that it does slow down as far as how bad it's going for Ottinger in this period, as he does make a couple saves and really doesn't have to make another save for a little while, as the Stars do start to get some momentum towards the Kraken end, where Grubauer is starting to make some saves, including a couple on at least partial breakaways that may have been challenged at the end by a Kraken defender, but still grade A scoring chances being given up by the Kraken defense. And eventually, it turns out to be one too many good chances, as Wemberg, it's a turnover off of the stick of Wemberg, but honestly, I think this is more just a good play from Dodonov to poke it off of the stick of Wemberg and then create the odd man rush going right back the other way, right from the Kraken blue line, so not a ton of opportunity for the Kraken to respond, where eventually Dodonov does get it through Larson, who's the lone defender for the Kraken, to the far side for, of course, it has to be Mason Marchment, who puts it in past Grubauer before he can, and I mean just before he can get his leg back to that other side. And the Stars have at least gotten one on the board. It's now 4-1. Then, not long after that, as we get towards the final minutes of this period, the Stars end up getting a power play, and while a 4-1 lead still looks pretty good, if the Stars are able to score on this power play, they now do have momentum with 2 goals in a row, and it's still just a 2-goal lead, which they've already this series managed to make a 4-2 lead in a third period disappear once. There's nothing to say they couldn't do it again, especially with more players than just Joe Pavelski playing. Happily, though, the Kraken are able to kill off this Stars power play really without too much trouble. They did a very good job on this kill. I don't think they even allowed a shot attempt on goal on it. And then in the final minutes of this first period, actually the final seconds of this first period, as we're closing in on the final 30 seconds of it, Ryan Donato on a, calling it a rush chance, I think would be a bit generous, as he has 2 Dallas defensemen between him and the net when he enters the offensive end, but they just kind of let him go around them, and it seemed to even kind of catch Donato by surprise, as he just kind of has this, I don't know if you call it posture or approach to this rush-ish chance along the boards of, all right, you're gonna give me more ice? I guess I'll take it. Wait, you're gonna give me even more ice to work with? I guess I'll take that too. And he continues to take that ice that Lindell in particular is giving him all the way up until the side of the net, where from a tight angle, but in close, puck ends up out in front of the crease, still very much within reach of Ottinger, who then makes the very questionable decision of, instead of trying to pull it towards him to freeze against his pad, instead he uses his blocker to shove it out into the slot, where the only player there to get to it is a crashing Eli Tolvanen, and they don't call him Golvanen for nothing. If he's given a golden opportunity like this, you better believe that puck's going in the net, and sure enough, he buries it into the net with just over 30 seconds left to give the Kraken the 5-1 lead going to intermission. Well, not quite intermission. There's still, again, those 30 seconds left, which the Kraken managed to send the Stars to another power play during. Either way, the 8 seconds of that power play are killed off, and we do go to the third with the Stars on the power play, but the Kraken with a healthy 5-1 lead. But again, you don't want to get complacent. It is a healthy lead. But if the Stars are able to score on this power play early on here in this period, it's then a 3-goal lead. And yeah, that's still probably a long shot to come back from in just 20 minutes of play. But the Stars have the offense to be able to do that. They've shown that over the course of the regular season. The Stars, though, would never get that opportunity, as the Kraken penalty kill, once again, is up to the task, at least as far as the part of the power play, the vast majority of it, that bleeds over here into the third period. The Kraken don't allow another shot attempt on goal, doing a good job of keeping the puck away from Grubauer. In fact, doing such a good job of keeping the puck away from Grubauer in this kill, that in the final seconds of it, they get it down to the other end of the ice, as Tanev, with the help of the puck ending up in the feet of Suter, creates a turnover at the Kraken blue line, and Tanev's in on a partial break. Suter's able to follow him into the Dallas end of the ice, but not close enough to prevent Tanev from getting the pass behind him across the slot to a coming in wide open Yanni Gourde, and Gourde buries it into the pretty much wide open net past, now it is Wedgwood in net, as, well, Ottinger was on the bench to start the third period and would not return. Either way, it's a one shot on Wedgwood, and he wasn't given much of a chance. It's into the net, and the Kraken have the 6-1 lead with the shorthanded goal. And again, with it being a Yanni Gourde in particular shorthanded goal, that really got the crowd going, as they were more than happy to let Yanni know that they were fully behind him this entire game, as this goal would lead to a Yanni, Yanni, Yanni chant all across the arena. That would not be the last time we heard that chant, and I don't even think the first time throughout this game. Either way, Gourde clearly a fan favorite with how he's played in these playoffs, and deservedly so. I suppose I should also probably mention with this goal, especially considering how out of hand-ish the end of this game ends up getting. Not nearly as out of hand as some other games and other series across these playoffs have gotten, but There's a lot of misconducts that we'll get to that end up getting thrown around in the final few minutes. Either way, the chippiness kind of starts here and frustration being shown from the Stars, as right when Tanev throws this pass out to Gord for what's a sure thing goal, Sutter then, who's right up in front of Tanev, gives him a cross check to the shoulders, which then sends him to his back, sliding into the board still at full speed because he hasn't had a chance to slow down at all, rushing in towards the net. Tanev, first of all, ends up being okay, but he gets up, making sure that Sutter knows that he made the mistake that led to the goal and now the puck's in the back of his net. And then after having done that, tries to go after him, which the linesman gets in the way of for a little bit, but then it really ends up being Gord that pulls Tanev away. And as someone pointed out on Twitter, if Gord is the voice of reason when it comes to chippiness after a puck or a whistle has happened, then you know that's probably a time to back off. Actually, come to think of it, I think I forgot to mention this with the Susie goal, but speaking of Kraken players letting opponents know about the mistakes they made that led to Kraken goals, when Susie scored that one, especially considering the conflict that he in particular has had with Marchment over the course of this series, he was definitely letting Marchment hear about how he again completely walked him to skate up to score that goal in the first place. He was waving at him as he skated up to the high five line, and then definitely did a little bit of an extra loop up by the Dallas net after the fact, definitely talking to Marchment as he went to the bench, which, at least personally anyway, I found pretty hilarious. Back to the third period though, at this point, even if it's still early on in the third, it's now 6-1, so this game is pretty much over, and the Kraken then end up getting a power play to boot, which they really don't do much of anything with, but again, at this point, killing off those 2 extra minutes is as good as anything, which they're able to do, and then they do a pretty good job of suppressing any Dallas attempt to really get back in this game. The Stars do end up getting a few shots off here and there, but nothing terribly dangerous. As we get into the final minutes of the period, things do start getting a little bit chippier and chippier, with some of that frustration and knowing that at this point they're going to lose really boiling over from the Stars. Well, I mean, they do end up getting one more goal actually not long after that first Kraken power play, which comes, of course, directly off of a faceoff that the Kraken lost in their end of the ice. It goes, I mean, if it wasn't directly off the faceoff, it was off the boards, then up to Hakanpää, who, kind of like McCarr had, it's just a one-timer off the faceoff. It goes right through everybody and past Grubauer, who I'm not sure saw this. There might have been a screen through the chaos following the faceoff. Either way, Grubauer doesn't seem to know it's past him until there's celebrations happening in front of him, and it's still 6-2 at this point, so the game's basically over. Eventually, going back to the final minutes of this third period, the Stars are the ones that get the first power play before things really start getting out of control. The Kraken again kill that one off, then the Kraken get a power play, and they do end up scoring on it on a Schultz shot from the point that just goes through everybody. Schwartz tries to tip it in front, but he misses it. It goes perfectly in the top corner. Kind of a fluttering shot, but again, there might have been a screen involved here. Gets past Wedgwood. It's 7-2 Kraken. Of course, the Kraken not always scoring on the power play, but when they do, it almost always comes late in a third period where the game's pretty much already been decided. And then with the final few minutes, again, it's pretty much, well, chaos might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it's just misconducts getting thrown out left and right. To be fair, most of them probably wouldn't have been misconducts at any other point in the game, but it's mostly just the officials recognizing that there's a lot of frustration from the guys in white and green at how this game has gotten out of hand. Plus, it's now 3 games into the series, so some of that dislike that's been building is starting to boil over. The refs just trying to make sure that it doesn't get too out of hand, so pretty much anytime there's a reason to, the refs just go ahead and give the guy 10 minutes, send him to the locker room to start getting changed early, which in the end has the Stars bench looking, I think like the broadcast said, like a beer league bench, and the Kraken bench not quite as light, but missing 3 players, with Dunn, Gord, and Geeky all getting misconducts. It ends up being 5 players for the Stars that end up getting them, so not dissimilar from what we saw towards the end of the season with the games against the Coyotes, but this time both teams getting involved. Oh, and yes, of course, with one of the Kraken players that gets sent to the locker room early being Gord, he is seen off the ice by the home crowd with, once again, more Yanni chants. Obviously, the crowd appreciating what he's brought again to this entire playoff run, not just this series. Not to mention the fact that people like seeing fights, or I mean, I don't really care for them, but a lot of people still like seeing fights in hockey, and even if there wasn't a true fight here at the end of the game, there's enough things that get close to fights to get the crowd riled up. Anyway, once again, when all the dust settles, the Kraken do come away with the 7-2 win, the 2-1 series lead, and again, it continues to be a game, series, playoff run, and even season for the Kraken that has been unpredictable at every turn. Again, as I've mentioned a number of times with this team throughout the season and already in this video, this continues to be a team that has made a habit of defying the odds and proving everybody wrong, whether that's making it to the playoffs in the first place, defeating the defending champs in round one, or just the unpredictability of this series so far, with a series that we expected coming in to be featuring a lot of low-scoring 2-1, 3-2 style games with lots of defense and scoring chances hard to come by. The first game then is a 5-4 game where the Kraken scored 4 in the first period. So then we think, all right, maybe this series will be higher scoring than we expected. After all, I suppose both teams did score at a pretty high rate over the course of the regular season. But then game 2 happens and it's right back to what we expected. Lots of defense first, not a ton of high danger scoring chances, and a much lower final score. All right, defenses have settled in, Dallas in particular, and Ottinger looked really good in really the final 2 periods of game 1 and all of game 2. But then game 3 happens, and as we already mentioned, every period of it was not what you would have expected by looking at the flow of play and how things especially showed up, at least on the shot chart, with the Kraken massively outplaying the Stars in the first period, their best period of the game, but getting nothing out of it on the scoreboard. Then the second period, again, the Stars outshoot the Kraken 17-8, but the Kraken come away with the 5-1 lead, shelling Ottinger after he was fantastic in the first period, ending up chasing him for the first time he had been chased from a game. I think one of the Dallas media said since December, all before going to a third period that featured 4 power plays and 2 goals with special teams, 1 shorthanded and 1 on a power play. And I think if you had said there would be 4 power plays and 2 special teams goals, especially with it being a shorthanded and a power play goal, you might have thought with how the Kraken power play has gone that would be 2 Stars goals, and sure, the Kraken still win, but it's a third period that kind of dulls down the excitement a bit. Nope, Kraken get 2 special teams goals, and, well, more of the same as far as not what we thought was going to happen. And you know what? In the end, isn't that what makes playoff hockey so great? Regardless of what the expectations are, you never know what's going to happen, series to series, game to game, or even in this case, period to period. And for the Kraken in particular, now with this big win here in game 3 to take the 2-1 series lead, they've only set themselves up, especially with the potential soon return of McCann, fingers crossed, to have even more playoffs coming in the future. All in all then, this was a pretty good, almost full 60-minute game from the Kraken. There was a little bit of a lapse there after they took the 4-0 lead in the second, where they did allow a few more good scoring chances for the Stars than you would like to see, and almost let the Stars work their way back into this game. Obviously, they were able to lock things down and score a couple more times to kill any hopes of that happening. And outside of that, they really outplayed the Stars in just about every aspect. Really, the only one that the Stars heavily controlled was the faceoffs. But even there, the Kraken only got out face-offed by 9 wins for the Stars, as they won 38-29 for the Kraken, which, considering how the other 2 games in the series went, is not bad for Seattle. Plus, even though Dallas did score immediately after one of their 1 face-offs, the Kraken also scored after a face-off they won, so I guess it's even as far as that's concerned. Finally then, as far as the Kraken 3 stars are concerned, my first star has got to be Matty Beniers. He has a fantastic game in this one. Full 200-foot play as we've come to expect from him, but especially getting involved in the offensive end where it's been a little bit quieter over this playoff run. He ends up with a goal and an assist, and I would say this was easily his best game of these playoffs, which isn't to say that he's had a bad playoff so far. Again, the points production hasn't been what we've expected from him over the course of the regular season, but I think a lot of that has had to do with that he's really become the focus for most opposing teams. Again, with most teams in the playoffs being used to having 1 or 2 players on an opposing team that they can focus on, and since the Kraken don't really have that with their great depth. Again, with the Kraken in this game getting their 16th unique goal scorer of the playoffs in Susie, and even in just this game having 7 unique goal scorers on those 7 goals, the 5th time this season that they've had 7 or more unique goal scorers in a game. So with that depth making it hard for teams to really focus on one player, it seems like they've just decided to focus on Beniers, and that has made it much more challenging for him to make things happen offensively. Still, he battles through that and makes it happen in this game with that goal and an assist. My second star, I'm going to stick with Philip Grubauer. Obviously, the Kraken set up Grubauer for success with the 7 goals of goal support. But Grubauer still came up with a number of saves and did help quell that push from the Stars in the second period from allowing them to get back into the game. And then the third star, again, you could go any number of different ways. The Kraken have 7 different goal scorers and even more guys that end up with points. Plus, one more time with the depth, nobody for the Kraken has more than 3 goals in these playoffs. So yeah, it's just spread across the board. So yeah, you could pick any number of guys. Wemberg has 2 points, a goal and an assist. Eberle has another fantastic game as that first line for the Kraken continues to really start to amp up the points. In the end, though, I'm going to end up going with Justin Schultz, who has a good game defensively, but really shows up on the offensive end, which is the part of his game that he's been historically more known for, and probably the part that the Kraken really were looking at when they signed him in the offseason. Still, he's been very good defensively for the Kraken as well, but gets those 2 points in this one, including the power play goal that, while it is kind of a garbage time power play goal, the Kraken can use any kind of semblance of ray of hope as far as getting the power play going is concerned. And actually, when it came to the Avalanche series, the little window of time that the power play was successful did seem to stem off of a garbage time power play goal, that time in a loss in game 3. Either way, Schultz has a good game, and you could name any other number of guys, which I'd love to hear down in the comment section, which other guys you would like to hear as stars here, or beyond that, just let me know what you thought of this game down in the comment section. Obviously, tons to like from a Kraken standpoint. How excited we are for the potential, still nothing's guaranteed, but potential of a McCann return in game 4. And the Kraken with a chance to really put the Stars up against it. If they can win both of these games here in Seattle, then maybe put it away in game 5. Maybe not getting too ahead of ourselves there, especially considering we've already seen a number of times how this series can just turn on its head like that. But still a lot of things to like and build on for the Kraken coming out of this game on the positive end. Until game 4 though, and whatever happens there, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to help support the channel, so I'd appreciate using them. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.